There is an old story about a traveler who arrived in a new city and began looking for the local Unitarian Universalist church. After searching in the center of town and not finding a UU church there, he went over to the area by the university. Surely there must be some UUs there, right? But no luck. So he got on a bus and he went out into the suburbs. Not immediately finding a UU church there, he thought, I must be looking in the wrong place. Maybe I'm too distant from where all the good liberals live. So flagging down a passing motorist, he asked, am I too far out for the UU church? The driver replied, honey, no one is too far out for that church. For centuries now, we Unitarian Universalists have been considered far out by traditional religious standards. We have always been those bucking conventional wisdom, questioning orthodoxy, and most of all, being a faith of radical inclusion. It is in our religious DNA to welcome diversity, to embrace difference, to preach and to teach respect and compassion. Our Unitarian and Universalist ancestors had a vision of a world not divided up into the righteous and the damned, the saved and the unsaved, the good and the evil, but instead a vision of a world united and connected by what Universalist John Murray called our common creation and our common destiny. Our All Peoples congregation is a community of acceptance, of comfort, of caring concern. Yet this is also a community that is about challenging us to become better people, to stretch our minds and our spirits, and to recognize that we all fall short of our aspirations. Our calling is to strive, to always be engaged with our faith, to practice what we preach, and to live out our values as fully and as completely as we can. Unitarian Universalism invites us to live in a place of interesting intersection between acceptance and challenge, between pride and humility, between our beauty and our brokenness. I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and in trying to find ways to express it and to explain it, the words of the song in our reading have helped me. Lady Gaga sings, I'm beautiful in my own way. I'm on the right track, baby. I was born this way. Now, after I decided to talk about this song in today's sermon, it hit me that it was released almost 15 years ago. That made me feel kind of old. It also made me wonder if I should choose a song that was more current and hip, I don't know, something by Lil Nas X or Chapel Roan or somebody, right? Then I read that just last week, Lady Gaga's Born This Way had been selected by Billboard magazine to be the #1 LGBTQ plus Pride anthem of all time. So I guess it is timeless and not that dated at all. Anyway, I think that Lady Gaga's words are a marvelous affirmation of our Unitarian Universalist values. Who I am is who I was meant to be. She says that this is because God makes no mistakes. The presence and the personhood of every living being is a unique gift, a beautiful incarnation of the holy. No one is a mistake. No one is a problem. No one needs to be corrected or eliminated. Now, my mother told me when I was young that she thought that all this fuss and all this prejudice against gay people could just be swept away if only some scientist somewhere could just prove that sexual orientation is genetic, that being gay is not a choice or a lifestyle, but just how some people are hardwired. She thought that in light of such knowledge, hatred of difference could be transformed into acceptance. Now, today we find that researchers are coming closer and closer to doing just that, locating what some are calling a gay gene amongst our strands of DNA. And we have seen in recent decades how attitudes about things like cancer and alcoholism and mental illness have changed. They've changed as people have come to understand them, not as manifestations of evil forces or purely a lack of personal willpower or self-control, but as diseases that affect the mind and the body. In confronting discrimination, some would say, if people just realized that being gay or trans is not your fault, then they would be kinder. Well, kinder, maybe, but affirming, I'm not so sure. There is a big difference between pitying somebody for their afflictions and celebrating them for who they are. When I was in college back in the 1980s, I was a BGOC. That's a big gay on campus. As the president of the LGBTQ student group at the University of Cincinnati, I was often invited to come and lead panel discussions for human sexuality classes. Inevitably, during one of these, almost all of these classes, some other student would raise their hand and they would ask me, "What do you think caused you to be gay?" This question always irritated me. With youthful spunk, I would retort, well, I think we look for causes for things that we think are bad or are wrong. I do not consider who I love to be a problem. I consider it to be a blessing. Like Lady Gaga, I was basically telling these folks, hey, I was born this way. And as God said in the book of Genesis, looking at creation, it is good. And for us as Unitarian Universalists, that way of thinking is supported by teachings that go back to the very earliest roots of our religious traditions. The very first American Unitarians stood up and openly challenged fundamentalist Christian doctrines about the depravity and the sinful nature of humanity. They said, hey, wait a minute, that is not right. We are capable of great things if we choose them. If we were created by an all-loving and all-knowing God, then some of that love, some of that wisdom lives within each of us. Rather than preaching redemption from original sin, they celebrated the blessings of human potential. This affirmation was brought forward by folks like John Dietrich and Curtis Reese and the other humanists of the early 1900s who insisted that it was up to us to make the world a better place and that we had the power and the ability to do just that. Today, right now in the 21st century, right here in Louisville, Kentucky, we find ourselves in this church to be part of a long line of people of faith who promote an approach to religion that is not concerned with conversion from wickedness or forgiveness from transgressions, but rather a religion that is focused on love, on transformation, on growing into deeper and more respectful relationship with who we truly are and who others truly are as well. Now, who we truly are, the truth, is sometimes we are not the people that we want to be or to become, even if we don't always want to admit that. We can be indifferent. We can be selfish. We can certainly be judgmental. We can be super judgmental of those people out there who we think are unfairly hateful and judgmental, right? We can be intolerant of intolerance. Sometimes saying, hey, baby, I was born this way, can be used as a cop-out. It can be an excuse for not living into our values fully, a way of brushing off the need to really examine ourselves with both acceptance and with humility. Lady Gaga says that God makes no mistakes, but we do make mistakes. I make mistakes, you do make mistakes, we all make mistakes. Now, I want to be clear that those mistakes, those things that we need to work on and change, those are not who we love, how we identify, how we love, the pronouns that we use. Our mistakes, the things we need to work on, are when we choose to hide from, or when we choose to ignore the truth of who we really are. When we let that voice in our head tell us that our presence, our experiences aren't good enough, aren't worthy. When we buy into that toxic way of thinking that tells us that other people's experiences are not good enough or worthy. When we think, even if just for a moment, that the love that we are capable of manifesting does not have the power to transform this world. In her song, Lady Gaga sings, "I'm on the right track, baby. I was born to be brave." I have come to believe that fully embracing who we are and are meant to be involves having the courage to not only look carefully into our own hearts, but also be brave enough to share ourselves, to speak our truths, to live our truths in a world that can feel dangerous and can be openly hostile to our truth. We celebrate Pride Month here at All Peoples because we are rainbow people. Pride is not just the issue of LGBTQAI plus folks and the oppressions that we and they face. Pride is not about the politics of gay or trans rights. It's not about the future of marriage equality. That pride spirit that we share here in this church is an expression of the very essence of who we are as religious people. It is bound up in our most sacredly held values. It is our declaration that no one is outside the circle of love, that no one is less than or unworthy of our respect, that all of us matter, that all of us make the rainbow, and that we are meant to be a rainbow. This coming Saturday, I heard there's going to be a huge, colorful, and kind of raucous parade going on in downtown Louisville. In years past, if you've ever been before, it's kind of a big party, a celebration with lively music, fabulous floats, balloons, streamers, lighthearted fun. With all that is happening here in Kentucky and all across our nation these days, with the very real threats to people among us and their families, with the efforts that are out there to kill our democracy and snuff out our freedoms. This parade on Saturday is going to need to be a little bit more than just a party this year. And our congregation being there, us being there as people of faith, proudly marching with all of our neighbors, proudly telling Louisville that our church is a church that sides with love. That is not just something to do on Saturday. That is an expression of who we are and what we believe. Baby, I was born this way, sang our friend Lady Gaga. And that way, when it comes to being a faithful Unitarian Universalist, that way is the way of love. It is the way of liberation and justice, a way that is loud and proud in the face of those who would divide us, a way that is brave and courageous when times are tough, a way that is both affirming and challenging too. It is a way and a path that we are so blessed to be discovering and living each and every day of the year, right here in this community together. Happy Pride, my friends. Amen. And so may it be.